In an underground fight club, two strong fighters engage in a fierce contest amidst the excited cheers of the crowd. Carter unleashes a series of powerful punches on his opponent, knocking him to the ground and marking his 6th win in a row. A new challenger steps into the ring, revealed to be Dalton. Carter recognizes him as one of the most notorious figures in the business and refuses to fight. Dalton collects all the money without even throwing a single punch. As Dalton heads toward his car, a man approaches Dalton, blaming him for losing $500, and then stabs him. However, Dalton appears unaffected, which frightens the man, causing him to run away. While treating the wound, Frankie finds Dalton and explains that she owns a Roadhouse in the Florida Keys, which has recently been harassed by local thugs. She offers him a position as a bouncer with a weekly payment of $5,000. However, he is not interested and turns her down. Frankie leaves her number in case he changes his mind. Dalton is tired of his life and stops at the railroad tracks, but at the last moment he changes his mind, and thankfully, he is unharmed. He sees Frankie's note and decides to go. Afterward, Dalton arrives in Glass Key. He meets Charlie and her father, Stephen, who own a bookstore. She gives him a book titled Fred the Tree, which is about the local history. Dalton then goes to the Roadhouse where he meets the bartender Laura and Billy. That night, a biker gang arrives at the Roadhouse. The leader, Del, begins smashing things and scaring guests away. When he harasses the waitress, Billy steps in to defend her, only to provoke Del. Del confronts Billy, asking if he's looking for another black eye. Dalton intervenes and sends Billy away, unaware of who he's dealing with. Del mocks Dalton, who then takes them outside, teasingly asking if they have insurance before attacking them, slapping each one. Del becomes enraged and a fight ensues between them, but none are a match for Dalton, who easily defeats them. Then Dalton takes them to the nearby hospital where he meets Dr. Ellie. She notices that Dalton has an open wound and helps him treat it. Back at the Roadhouse, Frankie is impressed by him and gives him his first paycheck. Dalton asks her if he can stay on her houseboat, and Frankie agrees, but advises him to keep an eye out for crocodiles. On the boat, he reminisces about his days as a famous UFC fighter. The next morning, he is awakened by Laura, who brings him breakfast. She shares that they have had many bouncers, but none lasted. Laura considered leaving too, but Dalton's arrival gives her new hope that things might improve. On his way to the bookstore, he is surprised to find that the locals begin to recognize him. He enters the bookstore and asks Charlie to use their computer. Just then, a few bikers are causing trouble in the neighboring shop, and Charlie grabs a bat and confronts the bikers, telling them to leave. When they see Dalton is also there, they immediately back down and leave. Dalton learns that Stephen has another job because selling books is difficult to make a living. However, the bookstore was his mother's idea, who passed away last year. Meanwhile, Ben, the boss of all the bikers, scolds the bikers for failing to complete the only job he asked them to do, which is to tear down the Roadhouse. He is angry that his men had been beaten by the new bouncer. Since Dalton's arrival, his presence has had a positive impact on the Roadhouse. He teaches Billy some fighting techniques, and together, they efficiently handle disturbances. Dalton also recruits Reef, a skilled boxer, as a new bouncer. The team maintains the safety of the place. In his free time, Dalton works out to keep fit. He finds himself haunted by troubling memories from his fighting days, experiencing recurring dreams of a particular match he once fought, and he wakes up startled. He then goes to a restaurant where he bumps into Ellie and asks her why the locals seem so aggressive. Ellie warns him that the people here have a certain way of doing things, and even the cops aren't always as helpful as they should be. Crossing the wrong people could get him hurt, or worse. However, Dalton doesn't seem to be intimidated. Later that night, as Dalton is walking home, a pickup truck suddenly speeds toward him from behind. He quickly dodges, but the pickup reverses and comes at him again. Dalton is propelled into the truck's bed. As the truck crashes into the barrier, Del and his girlfriend immediately exit the truck, and Dalton jumps into the water just in time before the truck falls off the bridge. Fortunately, he is unhurt. Dalton returns to the boat only to find Del pointing a gun at him. Dalton doesn't understand why they want to kill him. Del explains it's about the Roadhouse. Dalton attacks him, and the two struggle. Dalton manages to throw Del into the water, where a crocodile suddenly appears and kills Del. The next day, a man who works for Ben approaches Dalton and asks him to come with them because Ben wants to see him. While intending to draw his gun, Dalton quickly reacts, breaking the man's fingers, and tells him that if Ben wants to talk, he should come to the Roadhouse. Ben is furious that Dalton refused to meet with him and is ruining his plans. Just then, he receives a call from his father in prison, which makes him anxious. He decides to ignore it and throws his phone into the sea. His father then calls Knox and asks him to deal with a problem at the Roadhouse. Ellie drives her ex-boyfriend's boat to find Dalton and invites him for a ride to her favorite island. She tells him that Ben comes from an old Florida family that built most of Glass Key. When Ellie asks about Dalton's past, he becomes uncomfortable and suggests she wouldn't want to know him. However, Ellie reveals she's already learned about him online and kisses him, deepening their connection on the island. Meanwhile, Knox arrives in town and meets Ben. Knox delivers a punch as a message from his father and reveals that he is here to eliminate the bouncer. Ben asks him to give him another chance, and if he fails, Knox may handle the situation his way. Ellie drops Dalton off at home, where two cops are waiting for him and take him to the sheriff. The sheriff asks Dalton to leave town, but he refuses. The sheriff orders his deputies to pull him out of the car and repeatedly assaults him, then points a gun at him. At this moment, Ellie shows up and slaps the sheriff before taking Dalton away. Ellie confesses that the sheriff is her father, who used to work for Ben's father, a drug dealer. After Ben's father went to jail, the sheriff started working for Ben. Ellie is worried about Dalton's safety and asks him to leave. Meanwhile, two thugs approach the bookstore and are about to destroy it. In the evening at the Roadhouse, Ben meets Dalton and tries to intimidate him by showing him a video of his past fight where he accidentally killed his friend. After Ben leaves, he sends Knox to destroy the place. Knox and his gang cause chaos at the Roadhouse. Billy and Reef try to stop them but are knocked down. Then, a bar fight breaks out. Knox finds Dalton and attacks him. They engage in a fierce battle, trading punches relentlessly, with neither one backing down. Knox slams Dalton outside the bar and continues to provoke him, but Dalton tries to hold back and walks away, fearing that he will lose his temper against Knox. He goes back to the boat and packs up to leave when Frankie arrives. She tells him that Ben wants to take over the Roadhouse and turn the area into a resort for his drug business. That's why he keeps sending his men to disrupt her business. But she knows that Ben owes money to someone shady, and it won't be long before he's in trouble. Dalton still decides to leave, afraid he might end up killing someone. He arrives at the bus stop and notices that the bookstore has been burned down. Upon learning that Charlie and her father have been taken to the hospital, he decides to stay. Dalton turns into killer mode and goes to Ben's house, where he confronts one of the gangsters responsible for burning down the bookstore. With a swift and decisive punch, Dalton kills the man. He then finds another biker who reveals that Ben will be collecting some money at Harvest Key at 5 a.m. That night, Dalton has another dream about the match. It reveals that Dalton couldn't control his fury. He had already defeated his opponent, but he continued to punch him until he died. The next morning, Dalton heads to Ben's meeting spot and notices the deputy dragging a crate. He approaches him and knocks him out before taking the money. Sometime later, Dalton is making a bomb when the sheriff finds him, revealing that Ben has kidnapped Ellie and asks him to return the money. Dalton agrees to help. Later, he takes Ellie's ex-boyfriend's boat with the bomb and heads towards Ben's yacht. Dalton boards the yacht and finds the sheriff on board, who admits to deceiving him. However, it turns out that Ben actually did kidnap Ellie. Their confrontation is interrupted by Knox. Dalton detonates the bomb, causing his boat to explode, which in turn blows up the yacht. In the chaos, Dalton finds Ellie trying to break a window. Eventually, the glass breaks, and they swim to the surface. Ellie climbs onto a boat but discovers Ben is on it, who then takes her and speeds away. Knox attempts to hit Dalton with his boat, but Dalton manages to grab onto the side and climb aboard. He then takes control of the steering, causing Knox to lose his balance and fall into the water. Ben sees Dalton chasing them and turns his boat around to hit him. As the two boats collide, Dalton jumps onto Ben's boat. The boat heads straight for the Roadhouse and hits the reef. Dalton and Ellie jump off before it crashes. Meanwhile, Knox manages to survive, climbs onto the bridge and stops a car. Dalton enters the Roadhouse where Ben suddenly attacks him with a fishing spear. Enraged, Dalton retaliates and knocks him out with a powerful kick. Just then, Knox crashes in with his vehicle, and the ultimate battle ensues. Both Dalton and Knox utilize their expert combat skills, exchanging punches and kicks in a fierce attempt to gain the upper hand. As they fight, Knox tackles Dalton, landing several punches to his head. Dalton strikes back and executing a powerful takedown that sends Knox crashing to the ground. Dalton then attempts to lock Knox in a chokehold, but Knox manages to free himself and stabs Dalton with a sharp stick. At this moment, Ben regains consciousness and urges Knox to finish off Dalton, but Knox finds Ben annoying and snaps his neck, killing him. Just as Knox is about to kill Dalton, Dalton pulls out the stick and stabs Knox repeatedly until he defeats him, leaving Knox unconscious on the ground. The sheriff arrives and urges Dalton to leave, promising that he'll cover up the case. Dalton gets on a bus and leaves the town. Meanwhile, Steven discovers the money Dalton left for him. Surprisingly, Knox survives and wreaks havoc in the hospital before walking away.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out our channel for more videos.